Welcome back, guys, to Covenant Canon. Since the days of Halo 2, the Arbiter has become one of the most iconic elements within the franchise, a moniker for our beloved Thel 'Vadam. Yet, he was not the only elite to hold the position. In certain Halo titles, we've seen multiple elites from different times holding this mantle. So in this video, we'll be covering each and every known Arbiter from the Halo franchise, both in the Core Canon and the Silver Timeline. So without further ado, let's begin. Some might not know this, but the title of the Arbiter predates the original Covenant, stretching back long before the Sangheili achieved spaceflight. These early Arbiters were Judge King warriors who ruled large swathes of territory and keeps. Their mastery of war would inspire great loyalty in their warriors, both in high halls and on the battlefield. The earliest Arbiter we know of is Isu Labat, the Tyrant of Kivro. He would earn this sobriquet by ruling the entire continent of Kivro with an iron hand. His tyranny led to the creation of the first Swords of Sanghelios, a brotherhood of Kaidons sworn to end his reign and free the continent from his oppressive rule. Ironically, this brotherhood would later be restored and led by an Arbiter thousands of years later. The next to bore the title was Vima Togad, the Arbiter who led the Sangheili against the Sanshayum. On the rocky world of Olgathon, he infamously beheaded the Sanshayum delegation and returned their heads to the Forerunner Dreadnought, earning him the name Prophet's Bane. This began the desecration of Olgathon, leaving the planet uninhabitable and sparking the War of Beginnings, a conflict that would eventually lead to the formation of the Covenant. Togad's intimidating presence and vengeful ferocity left a lasting impression that the title of Arbiter would continue to be a place of high honor in the new Covenant Empire. Centuries later, Jet Lukutami would hold the title during the Covenant's discovery of the worm-like Legolo species and the war that followed. For a full year, Jet journeyed and surveyed the Legolo within the debris field and one of the moons of Tay. During all that time, he discovered the true capabilities of the Legolo, and after pacifying them, he persuaded the Prophets to incorporate them into the Alien Alliance. For that, he would forever be known as the Hunter of Hunters. Roughly 400 years before the Halo event, the existing Arbiter, Fal Chavami, openly challenged the authority of the High Prophet of Solemnity and denounced the Great Journey. For all this, he was attainted as a heretic, and his mate, Han, was executed. Fal Chavami would face down and slay thousands of Covenant soldiers, before ultimately facing his wife's murderer, the Hierarch's own enforcer, Haka Sukuri, in a duel to the death. Though both warriors perished, Fal's actions would ultimately lead to the fall of the Arbiters to become a mark of shame. Fal Chavami would forever bear the name, the Defiant One. Thus it was that the High Prophets created the line of Immaculate Succession. This act would shift not only the Arbiters that followed, but also the Sangheili standing within the Covenant itself. The Arbiters that would succeed Fal Chavami would be composed of influential Sangheili leaders that disgraced themselves after some disastrous failure. They would be sent on suicidal missions to redeem themselves in the eyes of the Covenant, thereby removing any potential threats to the dominion of the Hierarchs. From their inception to the fall of the hegemony, there would be a grand total of 18 Arbiters within this line. More than 60 years before the Covenant War began, the Ungoi Rebellion broke out within the Covenant capital of High Charity, when their feud with the Kig Yar led to open revolt. The sheer numbers of the Ungoi as well as their fierce resilience, led the High Prophets to turn to an Arbiter to end the rebellion. Nakai Vodar was chosen to lead the Covenant fleet against the Ungoi by partially glassing their homeworld of Balaho. This pacified the rebellion, and the bravery and resilience of the Ungoi was remarked on by Vodar, who allowed the grunts to be incorporated into military service. For ending the Ungoi rebellion, the Arbiter was thus known as the Rebellion Queller. That brings us to the Arbiters of the Human Covenant War. The first Arbiter of this time was Ripa Morimi, the 17th Arbiter of the line of Immaculate Succession. He was known as the Savage by his own people for his ruthless nature. An outlaw and warlord, Morimi put down numerous grunt and jackal rebellions before ultimately leading a failed coup against his own Kaidan. For this, he was imprisoned before being pardoned by the Prophet of Regret and was given the mantle of the Arbiter. With his new position, he led the Covenant war effort on the human colony of Harvest, where he would eventually discover a Forerunner shield world containing an armada of ancient powerful warships, enough to win the war. Before he could make use of them, however, the UNSC Spirit of Fire followed him to the planet, and he was ultimately killed by Sergeant Forge. The planet, the Armada, and the remainder of the Arbiter's fleet was destroyed not long thereafter. His body was never recovered. The last, and more well-known elite that bore the title of Arbiter was Del Vadam. All throughout the war, he rose high in the Covenant military, eventually attaining the rank of Supreme Commander. For the next 17 years, he led the Covenant fleet of particular justice in glassing 7 worlds, and in late 2552, he was one of the most prominent figures in the fall of Reach. After pursuing the UNSC Pillar of Autumn, he would discover the first sacred ring, Alpha Halo. But due to internal political infighting within the fleet, he was unable to stop the destruction of the ring by John 117, the Master Chief. As punishment, he was stripped of his status and was condemned to death before being offered the mantle of the Arbiter by the High Prophet of Truth. His first mission was putting down a heretical uprising on a Forerunner station on the gas giant of Threshold. Then he was charged with retrieving the activation index of the newly discovered Delta Halo, where he would be betrayed by the prophets and left for dead. This would be one of the key factors that brought about the Great Schism, a civil war that would tear the Covenant apart between the elites and the brutes. After discovering the true nature of Halo, he allied with the very beings he warred against for decades, and through their efforts, they defeated Truth's enforcer, the chieftain of the brutes, Tartarus. He and the Master Chief would later hunt down the Prophet of Truth, from Earth to the very forge of the Halo rings, the Ark. Within one of the installation citadels, Del Vadam slew the High Prophet with his own hands, ending the Covenant and its long war with humanity. In the years that followed, Vadam would forge stronger ties with humankind and would strive to unite the keeps of St. Helios under a single banner, the Swords of St. Helios. Despite enduring the bloody civil war known as the Blooding Years, it ended with the downfall of Jul Mdama's resurgent Covenant and signaled a new era for the Sangheli, with Del Vadam as their formal leader. He is thus known as the Kaidan of Unity. That's all the Arbiters in the Core Canon, but within the second season of the Halo TV series, they introduced their own Arbiter to the fold. A brand new Arbiter, Var-Gitanai. At some point prior to the Battle of Raj Kahashka, Var was once the supreme commander of the First Fleet of Solemn Accord. As his surname indicates, he was also a blade master, for the AI invokes master swordsmanship in Sangheili society. However, for some unknown transgression or failure, he was stripped of his title and was made the Arbiter, where it remains a badge of shame in the Covenant. He was thus given a new mission by the hierarchs of this new timeline, to accompany the Blessed One, known as Maquis, in recovering the 2 keystones that were stolen by the UNSC. During the engagement on the planet's sanctuary, he encountered the Master Chief for the first time, with a dozen Sangheili at his back, until ultimately withdrawing before the Covenant glassed the planet. Not long thereafter, he successfully recovered the Eridanus II keystone from within Sword Base on the planet Reach. He soon led Covenant forces in the Battle of Reach City, during which time he personally killed Vanek 134. Though the Covenant successfully glassed the planet, he and Maquis failed in their mission to recover the Meridian Keystone. They were thus recalled by the High Prophets to return to High Charity, to answer for their failure. Before they were able to do so, however, Maquis denounced the Prophets before the Arbiter himself. Getanai would have killed Maquis had it not been for the intervention of the human AI known as Cortana, who then projected a vision of Halo before the Arbiter, ultimately persuading him to abandon the Covenant. This led to a mutiny aboard his own ship, led by the priest Uto Undama, before ultimately being put down. In the end, he and Maquis managed to discover Halo, but not before being pursued by the very fleet the Arbiter once commanded. Both of them abandoned their corvette for the surface of Halo, where the Arbiter and the Master Chief faced one another one last time, in a duel to the death. Though he had the upper hand in the beginning, he would ultimately fall at the hands of the demon, who avenged the death of his fellow Spartan and brother-in-arms. And that's all the Arbiters in Halo. Which of them is your favorite? Which do you want to see more of? Let me know in the comments below. And until next time, guys, may the light of Urs guide your path. Victory to Clan and Kin Covenant fans. Covenant Canon out.